Good afternoon, fellow politicos. It is the Conservative Pelican here with another video. Earlier today, I attended a candidate forum, and it was put on by the League of Women Voters of the Piedmont Triad, as well as the Greensboro News and Record newspaper, aka Liberal League of Women Voters and Greensboro News Record. And this forum, I'm going to go ahead and get down to brass tacks. I'm 95% sure this was probably the worst organized candidate forum that I've ever been to in my 8 years as an active political activist, active Republican activist. Right off the bat, there were a lot of things I didn't like. First was that you actually had to register to attend a candidate forum, right? I never had heard that before, because usually all the candidate forums I've been to are open to the public, and you come and you don't have to register an RSVP. But I did RSVP because I'm a by the rule kind of person. But still, I thought it's kind of that in itself turns off a great deal of citizens in the community, because it just kind of feels like this is more of an elitist club. And then you get to the end, plus it's being held on a weekday at 12 o'clock when a lot of people are working. Now, to be fair, people can take off for their lunch hour, I guess. But still, this was in the northwest part of Greensboro. It's not very centrally located. Well, it is off the Bryan Boulevard Expressway, but still, not too centrally located. However, yours truly lives probably about 6 or 7 minutes away from the venue, which is the Temple Emmanuel. So there's that. But another thing I didn't really like was you come in, and this is supposed to be one of the legal members, they have this monthly lunch and learn series. Well, they decided to put a luncheon in with that. And fortunately, though, you didn't have to pay for lunch to attend the candidate forum. That would have been absolutely deplorable if they did that. They did have boxed lunches, but they were $11, and I'm not a boxed lunch kind of guy. You just don't know what you're getting with a boxed lunch, and I'm just not a cold sandwich kind of person. Unless it's cold sandwich being Oreo sandwich cookies and blended up ice cream like you can get at McDonald's or Dairy Queen, right? But when you walked into the room, again, at the Temple Emmanuel, of course, they had their synagogue, which they did not use for this forum. But the room they did use was like a ballroom. And this was probably the first quote-unquote candidate forum that was actually where you sat around a table with a bunch of strangers. And to a person who's an introvert like me, that's a little scary. But and my fellow Republican friends did not get to the forum till it was 30 seconds before it begun. And me, I'm Mr. Punctual. I get there 10 minutes early. But okay. So I didn't like that either, because of all the other forums I've been to before, you have the chairs in rows, and you can be kind of it's a more natural setting for a candidate forum, I think, kind of thing. But the biggest issue I had with this forum was the length of the forum. After the forum concluded, I heard somebody mention, when I was walking out, says, "That was a lightning round." And I just kind of, was saying in my head, yeah, it definitely was. And look, to me, politics is not fast food. It is a 8-course meal. And especially candidate forums are not to be done as a lightning round, okay? So what happened in this forum is we had, let me see, get my notes here, okay. We had about 12 minutes of introductions. We had the president of Legalman Voters, and then we had all the candidates that were in attendance, and all the sponsors, and and hey, try new chicken wraps at Subway. No, they didn't have that, but you kind of get that jokingly, right? Yeah, okay. And then they, let's see. The moderator was very good. She was so good that I felt sorry for her for coming because, okay, first off the bat, there were no questions from the audience could be allowed, okay. But secondly, this forum, okay, we started with like 12 minutes of BS, right? And then we finally get to the forum, okay. We started like 12 minutes after 12, and we were done by 12:46. So we had like 34 minutes, a 34-minute candidate forum, where we had 3 different races. We had sheriff, county commissioner, and school board, right? And this is 1 versus 1, but still, 34 minutes for one of these races. Okay, I'd probably prefer 40-45, but 34 minutes for one set of candidates. That would be okay. Maybe the perfect length for a forum would be between like 90 minutes and 2 hours. Kind of like the perfect length of a movie, right? 90 minutes to 2 hours. This was a 34-minute fast food lightning round. And I feel so sorry for Loretta Bonini, who is such a great reporter for Spectrum News out of Raleigh, that she would drive 3 hours round trip, or about 2.5 hours round trip, to the west side of Greensboro to preside over a 34-minute candidate forum. Whew. I mean, if I were her, I'd be banging on doors at Legalman Voters saying, "Pay me! This is a waste of my time." Or I at least hope that Spectrum News is compensating her for her gas. The gas drive from West Greensboro to Raleigh and back, and pay-wise, hopefully she's getting paid decently too. So, I could be a little more PO'd about it, but again, I live like 6-7 minutes away from the venue for the forum. But boy, if you were coming from High Point or Gibsonville, McLeansville just for this forum, oh boy, man, I tell you, you have every right to be steamed. And if you're Loretta Bonini, you also have every right to be steamed too. Okay, so, and then after the 34-minute fast food show, we went to breakout sessions, which were the district candidates for school board. And what was good about these was we got 4 questions instead of, well, you have 3 questions, and then you have the closing question, which is what differs you from your opponent. And then the general forum session was 2 questions, and then the what differs you from your opponent. Okay, so that's enough ranting. Let me go to the actual forum. First, we had the sheriff's forum. We had the incumbent Republican B.J. Barnes running against the Democratic challenger, Danny Rogers. Now, B.J. Barnes has been sheriff of Guilford County since 1994. Okay, and he started off with a lot of these. The questions were coming so fast for us. I didn't really get the question, but I got the gist of what the candidate was saying. So B.J. Barnes started off by saying, how to improve it. I guess it was how to improve the criminal justice system or something. But he says, we do have outreach programs, but the bulk of the non-offenders, are not showing up to court. That's the bulk of the incarceration rate. He said we do have the outreach programs in schools, and, we do have the drug problems or misdemeanor problems, but we do have a big problem with that locally in Guilford County. the challenger, Mr. Rogers, not related to Fred Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, said we need a directorate in the detention center. We also need better collaboration with the sheriff's office, and we cannot release a prisoner without really, can't release a prisoner, he was saying, without really back and expect them to be an effective part of society. In other words, he was saying that they need to get, skills when they're in prison and need to become employable in the job market, and also not get lost in the system. And then Miss Bonini did a question about the new jail downtown, aka the jail hotel, because it generated $1.5 million in revenue last year. Let's see. And Danny Rogers says that we need to use some of that money for grant programs, work programs, and put the funds together. Let's see. We need to teach hope and stabilize homes and have better education, as well as treatment for drug use, and put the right people into place in these drug treatment programs. Okay. Now, B.J. Barnes said that this new jail the new jail helped us keep federal prisoners in prison in Greensboro. And he said the revenue right now is currently going back to the general fund, aka the Guilford County budget. And he says the sheriff's office has great collaboration with the county commissioners, and we've established a good reentry program for prisoners. Because he said that it's very tough to gain employment when you have a criminal record. And we also have coping skill classes and anger management classes too. And Mr. Barnes also said that we are definitely helping the prisoners as they come out of prison find employment. Now we will go into differences with the other candidate. B.J. Barnes said he has 24 years of experience. The Guilford County Sheriff's Office is award-winning and has a great deal of respect nationwide. There have been no scandals in the Sheriff's Office either in the past 24 years. Also, he has served on the Governor's Crime Commission in both. Now B.J. Barnes is a Republican, but he's been appointed by a Republican and Democrat governor to serve on the Governor's Crime Commission. And Guilford County, since 1994, has seen a 65% reduction in crime, while the population has gone up. I don't have the exact percentage, but it's greatly increased. BJ then mentioned his opponent, Mr. Rogers, Danny Rogers, called out, well, the reason why we've had a reduction in crime while the population has increased because of annexation. But BJ replied, I've never seen a piece of land commit a crime. And that was probably my favorite line of the day. I got a good chuckle on it too. And it's kind of weird, though. Like, hardly anybody else in the audience. It was a tough crowd today. Hardly anybody else had a good laugh at it. I don't know why. Anyway. And he also said in the city of Greensboro alone, there's been a 30% reduction in crime since 1994. And then we have the accreditation. He mentioned that he is anti-CALEA because this accreditation has made departments less effective nationwide, and currently only 4% of the sheriff's offices in the nation are accredited. However, he did say accreditation is important to the crime lab as well as various medical fields. Danny Rogers said he's pro-CALEA and that he wants more transparency from the detention center. And then he goes into he wants positive change for the whole county. And then he kind of goes down one of these liberal road dead ends and just says blah, 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 blah. Moving on. County Commission, District 3, and Justin Conrad, the Republican incumbent, versus Tracy the Moth, the Democrat challenger. Okay, so we start off with a question from Miss Bonini, and she talked about that the North Carolina General Assembly has put into place a law stating that there needs to be new voting machines in every county in North Carolina by September of next year, 2019. And let's see, Ms. Bonini asked, when will you, if you're elected county commissioner, need the funds to implement these new voting machines? Okay, so first we start with Tracy, and Tracy mentioned that it would be 6 months, and she mentioned there are 165 voting precincts in Guilford County. And remember in a previous video I said there's probably about 100. It's a little off, but hey, still triple digits, right? 100 versus 165. Okay. Mr. Conrad, the incumbent, mentioned that when will he need the funds to implement the voting machine? Well, he said that depends on the funding in the next fiscal year. That begins in July 2019, funded in the next budget cycle. He said this is a bad piece of legislation. Mr. Conrad definitely shown a little bit of courage there. Republican calling out fellow Republicans in the legislature. That's a pretty brave move on his part, I must say. And he said that the voting machines that have been in place in Guilford County in the 2014 and 2016 legislative cycles have been very effective, and there have been no reported issues in the elections. And he says, look, elections are the core of our democracy, and every vote must be counted. And he says that there is actually a nationwide trend to go to more handwritten ballots. And probably the most important reason why Mr. Conrad does not want to get new voting machines in 2019 is because this is going to be a $7 million hit to the county budget. Differences with your opponent. Mr. Conrad is running on his record over the last 4 years. He's been a staunch advocate for public education, as well as the completion of the Family Justice Center, as well as the new animal shelter building. And he says that right now it's a 5-4 majority Republican on the county commission. But he says that we have lots of unanimous votes and we get along very well on that. Okay, now, Miss Lamoth. Here's another candidate, a Democrat, who took us over the cliff with her answers. What is your difference with your opponent? Well, she begins fairly cleverly with, well, me and Mr. Conrad are neighbors, our kids are in the same high school, and we both even went to the same high school as well. She says she brings a different attitude and different priorities to the commission, but she never elaborates on attitude or priorities. And in my notes, I put a big giant in the response. So she really took us off a cliff. Yeah. I think Mr. Conrad has that race in the bag, hoping and praying, but I think he's got it. Okay. Now it's time for even though we have like 10 different people run for school board, this is the only 2 candidates were in the main candidate forum for school board, and that's the at-large countywide race between the Republican challenger Mark Rigell and the Democrat incumbent Winston McGregor. And did you know Winston? I think that's a guy's name, but Winston McGregor is a lady. I mean, it's liberals, right? Yeah. It's like that skit from Saturday Night Live. This is going back, gosh, close to 20 years ago now. where Will Ferrell and Rachel Dratch are like cheerleaders, right? And then there's this cat named Mr. Bojangles. And then they start chanting, Mr. Bojangles is really a girl. You know, they go, Mr. Bojangles is really a girl. Mr. Bojangles is really a girl. I'm thinking to myself, Winston McGregor is really a girl. Winston McGregor is really a girl. Oh my gosh. This should be another race. Now, even though Winston is an incumbent, I mean, come on, Rigell, he should win. Come on, really. This very petite forum started off with which issue is most important to you, and McGregor goes off and, you know, into McGregor's garden and just goes all over the place. And, well, she says, we have to lessen the burden on the teachers. Okay, whatever. Better impact on student outcomes. Oh my gosh, they cut the coaching and professional development for teachers. How dare they? But she did close positively by saying that we need better parental engagement. And I actually agree with her on that. Mark Rigell. This is a guy in a couple other of my previous videos covering Guilford County politics. He's been very good. Very, very good. But he really hit a home run right here. We said school safety is the biggest issue. And you could like tell the entire room, it was already quiet, but when he said school safety is the biggest issue, you could hear a pin drop in the room. It got so quiet, and he had the audience so engaged. And he says, you know, we must address gang violence. He said, we're losing teachers left and right. Last year, there were 28 teachers that left High Point Central High School in the middle of the year. And also, there were 20 at Page High School in Greensboro. And he also says building mold is extensive, a huge problem in the schools. And he says these airborne pathogens that are in the mold are a huge health issue for students and teachers and administrative staff. He also mentioned test scores. Low test scores are a huge problem as well. Okay. Next, we have a question about programs for at-risk kids. Mr. Rigell said we need more mentorship programs. We also says we need to reinstate the Man Up program at Grinsley High, and we need more male teacher recruitment. Okay. McGregor's garden, she responded by saying, we need a mutual respect between teachers and students. Education is a right for students. Democrats love using that line for some reason. Keep kids learning. And we need a dynamic partnership with nonprofits and law enforcement. Huh? What? Anyway. Differences. Okay. Back to McGregor, the produce doctor here. She comes from a multi-generational household. She basically gives Mr. Rigell the middle finger here. Not literally, but just kind of the way she talked, it really made her sound like an ass, frankly. Because, I mean, Mr. Rigell's a lifelong resident, you know. How dare McGregor, attack Rigell that way? It's just really classless, really. And then she mentions, oh, yeah, I'm in Habitat for Humanity. I'm building houses with Jimmy Carter, man, the peanut guy. And you know, no respect for Habitat for Humanity. They do amazing things in the community. I have some friends that are on Habitat for Humanity. My dad was even involved back in the 90s in the Caroline County, Maryland chapter of Habitat for Humanity, and he was very buddy with the mayor of Denton, Maryland, Mr. George McManus. Sidebar there, excuse me. But okay, and of course McGregor, she goes off into her little socialist pool there. But Rigell, lifelong resident, he has worked in East Greensboro for 15 years, so he's not one of these Republicans who just hang out on the northwest part of Greensboro, which is a big, thing that Democrats like to point at Republicans. You're like, oh, you're a Republican, you must only hang out on the west side of Greensboro. It's like, no, a lot of Republicans, they go with the whole city, okay? Jeez. Anyway, he also has extensive experience in the juvenile justice system. And he wants to upgrade mental health counseling between patients and counselors. And he said very clearly that he is not a status quo candidate. He said the goal needs to be 100% academic success among students and not just shoot for 55, 60%. Very good. Very good, Mr. Rigell. I salute you, sir, and wholeheartedly endorse you for the at-large seat on the school board. Okay, now we go into our little rooms. A candidate forum that actually goes in a breakout session. Weird. I mean, this reminds me of something years ago, like back in 2010. I went to this public forum. It was on the Cross City Trail in Wilmington. It was cutting through like the College Acres neighborhood there behind UNCW, and there was like 95% of the residents opposed it, but they still put it in. But of course, by law, they're required to have a public forum, so they did, and they broke everybody up into these little groups. And I didn't even live in the neighborhood. I was just there because I was interested in the topic. But I did go into one forum and one little breakout room. And we discussed the forum a little bit more, but I mean, really, do we really need these little rooms? It's typical liberalism to either break people in these little rooms and these little subgroups, and then in the local government, it's like, how many boards and commissions can we have? How many committees? In Raleigh, it's the same thing. Over 500 boards and committees. It's But anyway, okay. So we have Wes Cashwell, who is the incumbent Republican. Okay. And had actually seen him speak at the county GOP meeting last week. And I thought then that he looked like Larry Hogan, the governor of Maryland, Republican governor of Maryland. But after hearing and sitting like 10 feet away from him, because we were at this table, and the room could only hold like 20 people, and there were like maybe 10 of us around this long rectangular table. But I'm convinced after today that not only does he look like Larry Hogan, I think he's actually a distant relative of Larry Hogan, because, I mean, he sounds just like Larry Hogan when he talks, okay? So I'm convinced that Wes Cashwell is a cousin of Larry Hogan, okay? And then we have Mrs. Irby, the Democratic challenger, okay? And what was good about this one, the only good thing about this part of the forum was they had 4 questions instead of 3. Yippee! Okay, so the first question was about achievement gap. What are the causes and what are the solutions for reducing the achievement gap among students in the public schools? Mr. Cashwell started off by saying that, achievement gap is based on the students and where they come from. They're various, are they white or are they of colored, minority, and that sort of thing. But he was talking about, we need a new curriculum that really can bridge the achievement gap. And he also says we need to give teachers better pay and incentives to go to the low performance schools. He also said that students, they need to have a desire and attitude to learn, and we need to engage the parents, teachers, and students all in a linear relationship. Mrs. Irby says that, again, she agrees with Cashwell that the achievement gap is based on, again, the ethnic background of the students. She says there's also a resource gap, and that students, they do have students of various ethnic diversity come into the schools, but they also come from various levels of income as well. And she says that we need to close the achievement gap by not just focusing on test scores. And I will actually say and add a girl to Mrs. Irby on that one. I definitely agree with her on that. You cannot just focus on test scores when you're in the public schools. Kids, every child is a unique gift and a creation from God, right? Everybody learns a little differently, and everybody, you just cannot have students say, okay, your future lies on this 100 question, 1 hour test or what have you. You have to actually have the student really get them into the right learning style and really work with them, kind of coddle them along. But she did say also that she likes the professional development of teachers by the school board, which is right now 5-4 Democrat edge. She also says we can close the achievement gap by having students identify with their culture, whatever that means. But she did say parents need to be a part of education, and I wholeheartedly agree with that too. Next, we have a question about teacher evaluation results. And one little quick note. These questions were done by not Loretta Bonini, but a member of the League of Women Voters. Basically, the members of the group give questions, and then for each breakout session, they'll have some member of the League of Women Voters actually read the questions to the candidates, and then they'll answer them. So no, we didn't have Loretta Bonini in a room, okay? She was in a big, 500-person ballroom, but she was not in these little itty-bitty 10-person rooms, right? But teacher evaluation results. Miss Irby said they need to be administered fairly. Principals need to make more classroom visits, and again, she said we can't always rely on test scores. And then she says students are impacted as much outside the classroom as they are inside the classroom. That's also something I really agree with her on that, because, you could have parents getting divorced, death in the family, death of a pet, fathers having alcohol problems, moms having an affair, all kinds of factors outside the home that can influence a student in the classroom. And she said we have to get the stronger teachers to teach the weaker students, okay? Okay, so Mr. Castrol then says, we have 41 schools that are underperforming in Guilford County. That's a lot. I don't know how many schools there are, but that seems to be pretty high, like half or more than half. And then he said 1 out of 5 teachers is underperforming, 20%. Wow. But he says we need more professional development in the school system, we need more mentoring. And he said, and I quote, we need to do everything we possibly can to help these teachers. And also said no more underperforming teachers teaching underperforming schools. It needs to be strongest teachers should be teaching at the underperforming schools. We also need to change the school climate, and by continuing the opportunity culture program. Okay, performance outputs that matter is the topic of this next question. Mr. Casual says students need to have a good teachable attitude. They need encouragement from peers, parents, and the community. And this, he believes this is all going to lead to improved educational outcomes. And he also says that we need, children need to have the want to learn. Okay, so, and then we have Mrs. Irby. Now, Mrs. Irby gives one of these really not just liberal, but socialist, scary dead-end answers, right? Apparently she says that we need more globalism in the schools. And she says that students need to be exposed to as much info as possible. Okay, I actually support that, but the global thing, no. She said that she's, according to her, we have 100 languages spoken in Guilford County. I'm like, well, yeah, really? But she said we need more language programs. Huh? And she said Arabic needs to be added. What? And then, she already crashed the car in the lake, but she goes on and says we need to prepare kids for long-term goals, and there's going to be changes in technology and new ideas, and okay, just doesn't make any sense. Then she says critical thinking skills, blah, 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 how's the world work? We need to use museums more often. Okay, I agree with that. More field trips, that's always a good thing. More hands-on, okay, yeah. But she wants to bring more of the STEM program to the middle schools, the science, the tech, the engineering, the math. And then we need more continuity in career programs and less start and stops as well. And finally, the grand finale, what are the differences between you and your opponent? Mrs. Irby says she's the mother of 6. She grew up in the New York City public schools and taught there as well. And that's, if you didn't know, that's the largest school system in the nation. And of course, she pointed that out too. She's a member of the National Parent Organization, and she went to Raleigh on May 16th for a rally on teacher pay, even though the Republicans, they've given teachers like 15-20% worth of raises over the last 4 or 5 years, even though I was slaying them saying you give tax cuts instead. It's like, the Democrats just, it's like, no matter how hard the Republicans raise teacher pay in the states, like the Democrats are like out to lunch. They jumped in a lake and it's never going to be enough. I mean, I'm sorry, but the cost of living in North Carolina is very low, okay? You're not going to pay a teacher starting out of college or even with 5 years of experience. You're not going to be able to pay them $100,000. I'm sorry, you're not in North Carolina. Now, if they want to go live in California, where the average home price is $1 million and they want to get paid $100,000, okay, fine. If they want to be in New York or Boston, but here you can get a nice house for under $200,000. Okay, yeah, okay. $40,000 to $50,000 or even $35,000 starting out is a very good, reasonable salary, okay? Okay. But then she goes into, well, she's all about commitment to community, and she wants to do the job every day. Now she attends school board meetings. Okay, I agree with her on that. Let's be a greater voice for parents. That's all fine and good. And an active, visible school board member. Mr. Caswell's closing. I'm going to vote for Mr. Caswell because he's a Republican, and the Democratic opponent, Mrs. Irby, is just way too liberal for my taste. And also because he looks and talks like Larry Hogan. But compared to Mr. Rigell, I think Caswell is a little too vague in a lot of his answers in these forums. He's just a little too flat compared with Mr. Rigell. So I'm going to vote for him, but he really needs some more substantive solutions in his responses. I would just say that. Okay. So Mr. Caswell and his differences with Mrs. Irby says he wants to be an advocate for every student. And he said there is no higher calling than providing an education. And he would say that the future is extremely bright for Guilford County Public Schools, and he wants to hire and retain only the best teachers, and he wants to make the curriculum the most up-to-date and challenging it can possibly be. Okay, so that concludes this train wreck, candidate forum. I'm attending next week. The Liberal Eagleman voters got another candidate forum. It'll probably be the same trashy format, but I have a couple friends that are going to be actual candidates that are actually going to be there, and I've already told them I'm going to be there, and I'm going to keep my word and actually go. But honestly, if if you're coming from High Point or McLeansville or Gibsonville, please save the gas in your car and do not attend. This is just a colossal waste of time. And I would just say that, I'll give them credit where credit's due. The League of Women Voters down in Wilmington did such an amazing job with their candidate forms. They actually give candidates like 30 to 45 minutes to actually tell you who they are and what they're for and against. The unaffiliated voter can actually probably have a decision in their mind made up when they attend candidate forums down in Wilmington as opposed to Greensboro. I mean, here it's just like fast food city. It's like, So I will say that one thing I'll be looking for, especially in we're going to have officer elections for the local GOP come up in March, right? The thing I'm going to be looking for is really, can the GOP organize a candidate forum of their own? Like the Lower Cape Fear Women's Club has done over the last few years. Can they actually do a candidate forum? That's one thing I'm going to be looking for. Whoever decides to run, and that's probably going to be who gets my vote. So anyway, wow, this has been a 40-minute long video. I'm impressed. Wow, I had a lot to talk about apparently. Anyway, for the Conservative Pelican, I am Bobby Crawford. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.